First things first with this video, if you didn't see last night being Monday night, at the time I'm recording this, the Bills-Bengals Monday Night Football game was postponed indefinitely due to Bills player Damar Hamlin having a cardiac arrest event on the field during the game. Very scary moment. If you did not see it, basically T. Higgins, wide receiver on the Bengals, was carrying the ball on offense and lowered his head into the chest of Hamlin, who was trying to make the tackle. A pretty common play in football, and his head struck his chest at just the wrong moment and sent Hamlin into a cardiac arrest event, which, again, if you don't know, is basically a heart attack. And he had to receive CPR and medical attention for several minutes on the field. He was rushed to the hospital, and last news I heard is that he is in critical condition, but he has vitals, so a pulse and all that stuff, but he remains in critical condition. So thoughts and prayers with Hamlin and his family, and really hope that he makes a speedy recovery, and that he is okay. So very sad news there. We won't be covering anything else with the Bills-Bengals game, but we will be going over the rest of the game. So we have our new notebook here, and we'll open up to a fresh page and get started with the rest of the games. As always, we'll start with Thursday night. With the away team on the left and the home team on the right. And this week we had the Cowboys versus the Titans. The Cowboys won 27-13. The Cowboys are now 12-4, and the Titans are 7-9. Dak Prescott threw for 282 yards and 2 touchdowns to lead the game. Hassan Haskins led the game with 40 rushing yards, and CeeDee Lamb led the game with 100 receiving yards on 11 receptions. Moving on to Sunday. We have the Dolphins versus the Patriots. The Patriots won 23-21. Both teams are now 8-8. Mac Jones led the game with 203 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Jeff Wilson Jr. led the game with 45 rushing yards. And Raheem Mostert Mostert led the game with 62 rushing yards, 62 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Cardinals Falcons is next. The Falcons won 20-19. The Cardinals are now 4-12, and the Falcons are 6-10. David Blow led the game with 222 passing yards and a touchdown. Tyler Algier led the game with 83 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Trey McBride led the game with 78 receiving yards and a touchdown. Lions is next. The Lions won this game 41-10. The Bears are now 3-13, and the Lions are 8-8. Jared Goff led the game with 255 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Jamal Williams led the game with 144 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown led the game with 62 receiving yards. Broncos Chiefs is next. The Chiefs won 27-24. A game I did not expect to be this close. The Broncos moved to 4-12, and the Chiefs are 13-3. Patrick Mahomes led the game with 326 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Latavius Murray led the game with 56 rushing yards. And Kadarius Toney led the game with 71 receiving yards. Next up is Colts Giants. The Giants won 38-10 and clinched their spot in the playoffs. Pretty impressive turnaround from last year. After being one of the bottom 5 teams in the league, they now find themselves as, I believe they're locked into the 6th seed in the NFC. Yeah, they're the 6th seed, no matter what happens next week. So they finished the year 9-6, or sorry, they don't finish the year, but they are now 9-6-1. And the Colts are 4-11-1. Daniel Jones led the game with 177 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. He also led the game with 91 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So big game for Daniel Jones. And Richie James led the game with 76 receiving yards and a touchdown. Saints Eagles is next. The Saints won this game 20-10. instead of the injured Jalen Hurts. This was a pretty surprising result. The Saints are now 7-9, and the Eagles are 13-3. Minshew led the game with 274 passing yards and a touchdown. Alvin Kamara led the game with 74 rushing yards. And Devonta Smith led the game with 115 receiving yards. The NFC East is now open for the Cowboys to win, which would be pretty interesting. The Eagles pretty much with one loss the entire year, 0 or 1 loss, and they might not even win their division. It'd be pretty unfortunate for one of those other top teams to meet the Eagles in the first round in a wild card matchup if the Cowboys end up winning the division. Panthers vs. Bucks is next. The Bucks won 30-24 and clinched the NFC South title, so they will be heading to the playoffs. The Panthers are 6-10 now, and the Bucks move to 8-8. This game required some more comeback heroics from Tom Brady. He threw for 432 yards and 3 touchdowns. Deonta Foreman led the game with 35 rushing yards. And Mike Evans had a crazy day with 207 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns on 10 catches. So Brady finds himself in the playoffs once again, and just like the Eagles, if they're a wild card team, I wouldn't want to see him on the other side of a playoff matchup if I were any team. Browns Commanders is next. The Browns won 24-10. This eliminates the Commanders from playoff contention, as they are now 7-8-1. And in the post-game press conference with head coach Ron Rivera, he said that he did not know that his team could be eliminated this week, which, I don't know, if you're a Commanders fan, that'd be pretty worrying to me, that your head coach doesn't even know what your playoff situation is like. And the Browns move to 7-9 with this win. Deshaun Watson had his best game yet, back from suspension with 169 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Nick Chubb ran for 104 yards, and Amari Cooper had 105 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Jaguars Texans is next. The Jaguars won 31-3. They moved to 8-8, and the Texans are 2-13-1. Davis Mills led the game with 202 passing yards. Travis Etienne led the game with 108 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Marvin Jones Jr. led the game with 61 receiving yards. They will play the Titans on Saturday night for the AFC South Championship. basically decides who wins that division and goes to the playoffs. '49ers Raiders is next. The '49ers won 37-34. Another game that was a lot closer than I expected. I wouldn't have expected a Jarrett Stidham-led offense to put up 34 points against the '49ers defense that's been pretty good this entire year. The '49ers still win though, moving them to 12-4, and the Raiders fall to 6-10. Stidham led the game with 365 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey led the game with 121 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Devontae Adams led the game with 153 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Jets Seahawks is next. The Seahawks won 23-6. The Jets fall to 7-9, and the Seahawks move to 8-8. And I believe that eliminates the Jets from playoff contention this year. Mike White threw for 240 yards and 2 interceptions. Kenneth Walker ran for 133 yards. And Tyler Conklin led the game with 80 receiving yards. Vikings Packers is next. The Packers won 41-17. Huge win for the Packers' playoff chances. They're now 8-8, and the Vikings are 12-4, although they are going through a pretty rough stretch of games right now. I could definitely see them being bounced in the first round of the playoffs, and might have replaced the Giants for my biggest fraud team in the NFL. Kirk Cousins led the game with 205 passing yards and a touchdown. Aaron Jones had 111 yards rushing to lead the game. And Josh Naylor, I think it's Josh, although I may be confusing that with the baseball player Josh Naylor, led the game with 89 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. Rams Chargers is next. The Chargers won 31-10. They're now 10-6, and the Rams are 5-11. Justin Herbert led the game with 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cam Akers led the game with 123 rushing yards. And Mike Williams led the game with 94 receiving yards. And last but not least is the Sunday game, the Sunday night game, Steelers-Ravens. The Steelers won this game 16-13. They are now 8-8, and the Ravens are 10-6. Kenny Pickett led the game with 168 passing yards and a touchdown. Najee Harris led the game with 111 rushing yards. and Mark Andrews led the game with 100 receiving yards. So again, we will not be talking about the Monday night game anymore, just wishing for a good, speedy recovery from Damar Hamlin. The Week 18 predictions video will be out either Wednesday or Thursday before Thursday Night Football. And after next week, I will be having full playoff predictions out for the NFL playoffs. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found some relaxation